I never imagined betrayal could feel like a knife twisting inside my chest until that night. The night I stumbled upon the truth that shattered everything I thought was unbreakable. It was an ordinary Wednesday evening. I had left work early, hoping to surprise my wife Sarah with her favorite dinner. My heart was light as I picked up flowers on the way home, unaware that those same flowers would end up wilting on the kitchen counter, untouched. When I walked in, the house was unusually quiet. Sarah was humming in the shower, her voice carefree, almost too carefree. That's when I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter, screen lighting up again and again with notifications. At first, I ignored it. Trust had always been the foundation of our marriage. But something inside me, an instinct I couldn't shake, made my eyes drift toward the glowing screen, and there it was. A message preview that froze my entire body. Last night was unforgettable. I can still feel you with me. I'll never get enough of you. The words burned themselves into my mind. My hands trembled. My throat tightened as if someone had gripped it with iron claws. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out everything else. When Sarah stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, smiling like nothing was wrong, I looked straight into her eyes. My voice came out raw, barely more than a whisper, but heavy with devastation. I know everything. Her smile vanished. The color drained from her face, but instead of tears, instead of guilt, what I saw in her eyes was far worse. Detachment, coldness, and that was the moment I realized my world would never be the same. Her eyes, once warm with promises of forever, now looked at me as though I were a stranger standing in her living room. The silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating, broken only by the faint dripping of water from her damp hair. I expected denial. I expected excuses. I expected her to fall apart, to plead, to explain. But Sarah simply tightened the towel around herself, drew in a shallow breath, and whispered the words that would carve themselves into my memory forever. I'm sorry. I don't love you anymore. 14 years of marriage collapsed in that instant. Every birthday we celebrated, every dream we shared, every plan for the future, all reduced to ash in a single, merciless sentence. I felt as though the walls themselves were caving in, crushing me under their weight. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might break through my chest. Without another word, I walked to the bedroom, yanked an old duffel bag from under the bed, and stuffed it with whatever clothes my shaking hands could grab. Sarah didn't stop me. She didn't even move. By the time I reached the door, the flowers I had bought for her still sat untouched on the counter, mocking me with their fragile beauty. I stepped outside into the cool night air, my body trembling, my soul hollow. The home I once believed unshakable was now nothing more than a haunted memory, and so I left, carrying nothing but a bag and the ruins of a broken heart. The night swallowed me whole as I drove aimlessly, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I had no destination, no plan, only the unbearable weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. My mind screamed, my heart bled, and yet my body moved on instinct, searching for somewhere, anywhere to escape before I even realized it. I found myself pulling into the driveway of my oldest friend, Mark. We had grown up together, weathered the storms of adolescence, celebrated each other's milestones. If there was one place I knew I wouldn't be turned away, it was here. When the door swung open, Mark didn't ask questions. He saw the duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the pain etched across my face, and without hesitation, he stepped aside. "Stay as long as you need," he said simply, his voice steady, a lifeline thrown into the chaos consuming me. But Mark wasn't the only one there. Sitting quietly on the couch, a book resting on her lap, was his younger sister, Emma. I hadn't seen her in years, since she left for college. She looked up, her eyes soft, curious, but sharp enough to cut through the mask I was struggling to hold. "Hi, David," she said gently, her voice carrying both warmth and something else. Something knowing. I managed a nod, unable to muster anything more. My world was collapsing, and yet in that moment, in her steady gaze, I felt the faintest flicker of grounding. That night, lying awake in Mark's spare room, The ceiling above me blurred through tears. I realized this was just the beginning. My wife's betrayal had destroyed the man I was. But under this roof, with Mark's loyalty and Emma's quiet presence, something new was about to take shape. Sleep became a stranger to me in those first nights at Mark's house. I lay on the guest bed staring at the ceiling, the faint hum of the old ceiling fan above doing little to quiet the storm inside my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's phone screen glowing with that message. Those words that had gutted me. My chest tightened, my breaths came shallow, and anger twisted with sorrow until I could no longer tell one from the other. On the third night, when the weight pressed so heavy that I thought my ribs might crack, there was a soft knock at the door. "David, are you awake?" Emma's voice, gentle, cautious. I sat up, wiping at my eyes quickly, though I knew she could probably tell. "Yeah," I managed, my voice hoarse. She stepped inside, a mug in her hands. Steam rose from it, filling the room with the faint scent of chamomile. She handed it to me without a word, then pulled the chair from the corner closer to the bed. For a long moment she just sat there, her eyes steady on me, unflinching. Finally, she broke the silence. "You're punishing yourself with your silence, you know." Her words startled me. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're holding it all in," she said softly. "You think by not talking about it, you'll make it disappear. But all you're doing is protecting her, protecting the woman who hurt you." The mug trembled in my hands as her words sliced through my fog. She wasn't just comforting me. She was pointing towards something darker, something I hadn't yet considered. Emma knew something. I could see it in her eyes, and suddenly my sleepless nights felt less like an end, and more like the edge of a beginning. Emma's eyes held mine with a steadiness that made it hard to breathe. There was no pity in her gaze, only truth, sharp and unyielding, as if she had been carrying a weight for too long and had finally decided to set it down. "David," she said quietly, "what you saw," what Sarah admitted, "it isn't the whole story." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, already dreading the answer. She leaned forward, her voice lowering to a careful hush, though the walls of Mark's house were thick and the night outside was silent. "I've seen her before, with him. And not just him." The blood drained from my face. "What do you mean? Not just him?" Emma swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the arms of the chair as if steadying herself. "Sarah has been living another life. I've seen her with at least 3 different men over the past year. Restaurants, hotels, even right here in town, like she wasn't even trying to hide it. She thought no one was watching. But I was. I couldn't say anything. I didn't know how. You were my brother's best friend, and I didn't want to be the one to break you. But now..." Her voice broke for the first time. "Now I can't stay silent." The room spun around me, my hands clenched into fists, knuckles white. I felt the air being sucked out of my lungs, as if the walls were collapsing in on me. "She didn't just betray you once," Emma continued, her eyes glistening, though her voice stayed firm. "She's been deceiving you for months, more than a year. Every moment she smiled at you, every time she told you she loved you, she was lying. She was laughing at you behind your back." Her words cut deeper than any blade could. The pain I had been drowning in turned into something sharper, something hotter, rage. Not the kind that lashes out blindly, but the kind that hardens into resolve. I pressed my palms into my face, trying to steady my breathing. But the truth had already taken root. Sarah hadn't just broken our vows. She had been living a lie, making me into a fool for far longer than I could bear to imagine. And in that moment, grief began to give way to something new. A fire. I wasn't just broken anymore. I was ready. The night Emma revealed the truth, I barely slept. I lay awake in the dark, my heart racing, her words echoing endlessly in my mind. Sarah hadn't just made a mistake. She had chosen deception again and again, weaving an entire life of betrayal behind my back. At first, the grief threatened to consume me. I could still see her face when she said, "I don't love you anymore." Those words had gutted me. But now, something else stirred within me, rising from the ashes of my sorrow. Rage. Not the wild, reckless kind. No, this was colder, sharper. It cut through the fog of my pain like steel through cloth. For days, I barely spoke, but Emma noticed the change in me. She saw the way my shoulders straightened, the way my jaw clenched, the way my silence shifted from brokenness into focus. You're planning something, she said one morning, her voice calm, but knowing. I looked at her, my eyes steady. I won't let her walk away laughing at me. She destroyed our marriage, mocked everything we built. But she doesn't get to win. Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if she had been waiting for me to say those words. Then let's do it the right way. No shouting, no begging, no scenes. We'll take away the one thing she thinks she owns, control. Her words crystallized my resolve. I wouldn't confront Sarah in anger. I wouldn't let her see me broken. No, this time I would take back the power. And I would do it so carefully, so completely, that when she finally realized what had happened, it would already be too late. Once the decision was made, the fog of despair began to lift. My grief had been paralyzing, but now it sharpened into focus. If Sarah thought she could rewrite the story of our marriage with lies, I would rewrite the ending with truth. Emma became my anchor in those days. She knew where Sarah had been, who she had been with, the patterns of her secret life. Her memory was frighteningly precise. Dates, places, names, things she had never wanted to recall, but had carried in silence for months. Together, we began to piece it all together. Emma sifted through her phone for photos she had once taken by accident, snapshots of Sarah walking arm in arm with strangers in places she didn't belong. She dug out receipts, remembered locations, even tracked down social media check-ins that Sarah had carelessly left public. Mark, too, joined the fight. At first, he had been furious with Emma for keeping the secret, but once he saw how shattered I was, his loyalty roared to life. "She's not going to destroy you, David," he said firmly. "We'll make sure of it." With his connections, Mark helped me gather even more evidence. Friends in the city saw Sarah at bars, with men they didn't recognize. One even had a photo from months ago, proof I never knew existed. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. I catalogued everything in a neat folder. Dates, times, pictures, witness accounts. Every detail carefully placed. Every betrayal frozen in ink and image. I wasn't going to confront her with a single angry outburst. No, I would let her own actions speak louder than my words ever could. By the time we finished, I no longer felt like a broken man clutching at fragments. I felt like someone holding a weapon forged from truth, and when the time came, I would strike, not with rage, but with undeniable proof. When the folder was finally complete, I held it in my hands like a loaded weapon. Every photo, every receipt, every timestamp was a nail in the coffin of Sarah's carefully constructed image. She had spent years building a reputation. Devoted wife, loyal partner, trustworthy woman. But all it took was the truth to bring it crashing down. I didn't confront her directly. Confrontation would have given her control. Her tears, her excuses, her manipulations. No, this wasn't about giving her a chance to twist the story. This was about letting the truth speak louder than both of us. One by one, I sent the file. Her family, her closest friends, her colleagues at work. People who had admired her, trusted her, respected her. They all received the same message. Evidence, undeniable and cold. It didn't take long. By nightfall, her phone was blowing up. Emma showed me as the messages started flooding in. Texts from Sarah's family demanding answers, calls from her friends that went unanswered, notifications from her workplace. The woman who once carried herself with untouchable confidence was suddenly drowning under the weight of her own lies. For the first time in months, I breathed easily. Sarah had thought her betrayal would remain hidden in shadows. She had believed I would stay silent, humiliated and broken. But now the spotlight of truth was burning her world to the ground, and I didn't have to raise my voice or beg her to see what she had done. Her carefully crafted mask had been ripped away for all to witness, and she was left standing in the wreckage, exposed, stripped, powerless. The storm that followed the exposure was swift and merciless. Sarah's phone, once a lifeline of praise and admiration, now vibrated with accusations and disbelief. She tried to reach me, calls, messages, desperate attempts to explain, but I ignored every one. I didn't need her words anymore. I had the truth. The next step wasn't emotional. It was practical. I sat across from a lawyer, the folder of evidence laid neatly between us. Photos, receipts, witness statements. My hands no longer trembled as I handed them over. For the first time in weeks, my voice was steady. The lawyer flipped through the pages, his brow rising with each revelation. When he finally looked at me, his tone carried no doubt. "With this much proof, David, the case is already in your favor." The divorce papers were drafted quickly. Sarah had assumed she would keep the house, the savings, the life we had built together. But the evidence shifted everything. Her web of lies, her careless affairs. Every detail became a weapon in the courtroom. When the judge's gavel finally struck, it was not me who walked away empty-handed. It was her. The house, the accounts, the stability she thought guaranteed, all slipped through her fingers like sand. I didn't smile. Victory didn't taste sweet. But it was justice, clean and undeniable. Sarah had gambled everything on my silence. She had believed her betrayal would leave me powerless. But instead, her own choices had built the case that stripped her of everything she valued, and I walked out of that courtroom lighter, freer, and unshackled. In the weeks that followed the court's decision, I expected to feel nothing but hollow. Years of love, trust, and effort had ended with a signature on divorce papers. The silence of freedom felt strange, almost too vast, like stepping into an empty house after a storm. But through that silence, Emma was there. Every morning, she'd knock gently on my door, sometimes with a cup of coffee, sometimes with nothing but her quiet company. She didn't pry, didn't press me to talk. She simply sat with me, reminding me I wasn't alone. One evening, as we sat on the porch, the night air cool against our skin, she spoke words that changed me. "Betrayal doesn't define you, David. It doesn't make you less. It just refines you. It burns away illusions until all that's left is who you really are." Her voice was steady, but her eyes shone with conviction. For the first time since Sarah's betrayal, I felt something stir inside me. Not anger, not grief, but strength. With Emma's encouragement, I started putting the pieces back together. I returned to hobbies I had abandoned, spent time outdoors, reconnected with old friends who reminded me of who I had been before the lies consumed me. Slowly, the mirror no longer reflected a broken man. It reflected someone forged by fire. Emma didn't just offer comfort, she reminded me of resilience, of the truth that my worth had never belonged to Sarah and never would. Day by day, with her by my side, the scars became less about pain and more about proof of survival. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when my phone rang. I almost didn't recognize the number, but the tremble in the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "David, please, can we talk?" Sarah. Her words stumbled through tears, her tone so different from the cold detachment I had heard the night I left. She was no longer confident, no longer untouchable. She was fractured. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I didn't realize what I was throwing away. Please, give me one more chance." For a moment, silence stretched between us. Once those words would have broken me. Once I would have given anything to hear her ask for me back. But now I felt nothing but clarity. I pictured her lies, her affairs, the way she had stripped away my trust without remorse. And then I thought of the strength I had rebuilt, the life I was beginning to create without her shadow. "No, Sarah," I said firmly, my voice steady and calm. "You made your choice. Now live with it." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't stay to listen. I ended the call, not with anger, but with finality. For the first time since her betrayal, I felt truly free. Looking back now, I realized betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one. For so long, I believed Sarah's unfaithfulness had destroyed me, that it had stripped me of my worth and left me broken beyond repair. But the truth was different. Her choices never defined who I was. They only revealed who she truly had been all along. I once thought revenge meant hurting her the way she hurt me. But I learned something far greater. The truest revenge isn't in destruction. It's in rising so high above the ruins that the one who betrayed you can no longer reach. Sarah's infidelity was a fire that burned away illusions, leaving behind only the raw truth. And in that truth I found strength. I found clarity. I found the reminder that betrayal may wound deeply, but it can also forge resilience like nothing else. I no longer carry bitterness in my heart. Instead, I carry freedom. The freedom of knowing I survived, I rebuilt, and I thrived. And that is the lesson I will never forget. When someone betrays you, they don't end your story. They simply write themselves out of it. If you've listened this far, I want you to take something with you. Betrayal is one of the deepest wounds a person can endure. It crushes trust, shakes your identity, and leaves you questioning every moment you once held sacred. But here's the truth. Betrayal does not have the power to define you. It can break your heart, yes. But it cannot break your spirit unless you allow it to. I thought Sarah's lies would be the end of me. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life drowning in her choices. But what she never understood is that the human heart can rise from ashes. It can grow stronger, sharper, and freer than ever before. So if you've been betrayed, if someone has broken your trust and left you bleeding in silence, remember this. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to become after. Let my story be a reminder that even in your darkest nights, there is light ahead. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced betrayal? What did it teach you? Share your story in the comments. I promise your voice matters here. Don't forget to follow for more stories that reveal not just pain, but the strength that comes after.